The rain is falling, the room is quiet, and I've saved you a story. Make this a part of your nightly ritual. Subscribe, get cozy, and let go of today. It slipped out with the receipt. I didn't notice it at first. Just a small piece of paper folded once, tucked beneath a long white strip of numbers and barcodes. I was unpacking groceries, distracted, moving too quickly. The receipt was from the corner shop, the one I never look at. I almost crumpled it and threw it out. But something about the handwriting caught me. It was blue ink, a little shaky, slanted slightly to the left. Just one line near the bottom of the paper, just below where it listed milk, apples, bread. It said, "Don't forget the tomatoes," or her smile. That was all, nothing else. No signature, no date. But something about the sentence stayed. I read it again, folded the paper back up, set it on the table next to the fruit bowl like it might mean something more tomorrow. It didn't feel like a mistake. It didn't feel like someone writing to themselves. It felt like something left on purpose. For someone, for anyone. All day I thought about it. Who she was, who he was. Maybe. Maybe it wasn't a man at all. Maybe someone older. Maybe the note had sat in that register drawer for days, weeks, waiting to land in the right bag. I went back to the shop that evening, bought nothing important. I looked at the cashier, young, distracted, tapping at her phone between customers. She didn't look like she knew anything about the note. I didn't ask. I just watched as she handed me another receipt blank, normal. It made me feel something small, something curious, something just quiet enough to follow. The next morning I took the note with me. Not because I had a plan. I just didn't want to leave it alone on the table. It felt wrong somehow, like it needed to breathe in a pocket, not sit still next to bananas. I walked slower than usual, eyes drawn to corners I'd usually ignore, the back of lampposts, the slats of benches. I knew I wouldn't find anything, but part of me hoped I might. I stopped by the flower stall on Green and Maple, where the air always smells faintly of wet cardboard and eucalyptus. There was an older man arranging daffodils into small bundles, humming something under his breath. I bought a single stem, asked him if he ever found handwritten notes in his deliveries. He paused, thought, then smiled. "Used to," he said. "Back in winter, someone left little messages inside the newspaper wraps. Said things like, 'Call her today,' or 'You still matter.'" He shrugged. "Haven't seen one in a while, though." I nodded, heart warmer than I expected. I thanked him and walked on. At the coffee shop 2 blocks down, I left my change on the counter with a scribbled message on the back of the receipt. Maybe this is the smile they meant. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if anyone read it. It wasn't about replies. That evening back at home, I reread the note again. "Don't forget the tomatoes," or her smile. I stared at the word "her." It was so casual, like something shared in long habit. Maybe they lived together. Maybe it was a ritual tomato soup, maybe. Or just something she always added to salads. Maybe she was gone now, or far away, or simply late for dinner. Either way, the writer had remembered enough to write it down, to fold it, to let it float into someone else's life. I opened my kitchen cabinet. No tomatoes, I walked back to the store. The second note I wrote was shorter than the first. Just 3 words. Today still counts. I didn't plan it. It came while the kettle boiled, uninvited but welcome. I tore a corner from an old envelope, wrote it down in block letters, and slipped it into my coat pocket. That day, I passed by the bus shelter on 5th, the one with the cracked glass and the plastic bench that never quite dries. Someone had left a paperback novel on the seat, half wet, pages swollen at the spine. I tucked my note between chapters 21 and 22. No one saw me. I didn't wait, just kept walking. That night I returned to the folded receipt. I'd started calling it that in my head, not the note, not the message, just the folded receipt, like it had its own name, its own role. I unfolded it again. The words hadn't changed, of course. Don't forget the tomatoes, or her smile. But my reading of them had. It didn't feel mysterious anymore. It felt sacred. A tiny monument to someone's memory, or maybe just their care. I started writing more often. Nothing grand, nothing poetic, simple fragments. Warmth arrives quietly. She might need a reason to laugh today. You're allowed to feel full, even if nothing new happened. Sometimes I left them in library books. Once in a cereal box at the store, once under a napkin in a coffee shop. I didn't call it a project. I didn't call it anything. It just became a rhythm, like remembering to water the plants or turning off the hallway light before bed. Something about that original note had shifted something in me. It wasn't about solving anything. It wasn't about finding the writer. It was about carrying the softness forward, like someone had quietly handed me a lit match in a cold room, and now it was mine to shelter, not to let burn out, not to forget. It happened in the laundromat, a place I rarely went, usually preferring the quiet hum of home. But that day, my machine had finally quit. The place was nearly empty, except for one woman folding clothes slowly, methodically. We exchanged the kind of nod reserved for people who have no reason to speak, but still share the air. I sat 2 machines down, watching the slow spin of colors and soap. After a few minutes, I noticed she had a small notebook on the bench beside her. Soft cover, plain, corners worn. It wasn't a planner. It didn't have dates or grids. Just a single line handwritten on the visible page. They don't have to know you're hurting. I didn't mean to stare, but something about the handwriting looked familiar. Not the style, the intention. Like it came from the same quiet place mine did. She noticed, closed the notebook gently. Then, without ceremony, said, "I leave them too." "Notes?" I asked. She nodded. "Parks, buses, once on a mirror in the dressing room at that thrift store on Lowell." I smiled. "Bookshops, cereal boxes." We didn't laugh. Not exactly. It was quieter than that. More like exhaling a shared truth. "I found one once," I said, "at the bottom of a grocery receipt. Changed my week." She folded a pair of jeans slowly. "Me too." Mine said, "You still matter, even if no one sees it." That was last spring. There was a silence between us that didn't feel like distance. It felt like warmth, like having someone else in the room who knows the weight of quiet and doesn't try to fill it. Before she left, she tore a page from her notebook, and handed it to me without looking at what she had written. I didn't read it right away, just slipped it into my jacket like it was always meant to be there. When I got home and unfolded it, I saw the words, "If it stayed with you, maybe it was meant to." I didn't know if she meant the receipt, the note, the conversation. It didn't matter. Some things arrive gently, and then they stay. I returned to the corner store a few days later, not because I needed anything, just to be near the beginning again. The same cashier was there, barely glancing up as I entered, the same overhead hum, same slow fridge door. I moved slowly down the aisles, letting my hand trail lightly over cans and bags and bottles, not touching with intention, just presence. I picked up a bag of rice, a bar of soap. I didn't need either. I placed them on the counter without a word. She scanned them in silence. The register beeped, the receipt printed. I almost didn't look, but as she handed it over, folded beneath it again a second slip, folded once, smaller this time. My fingers didn't shake, but they paused. I waited until I was outside. I stepped around the corner, leaned against the brick wall, where the light always seemed a little softer, and opened the paper. It read, "Someone remembered." So I wrote again. That was it. No other markings. No signature. But it wasn't the handwriting from before. This one was steadier, neater, someone else. A different echo. My heart didn't race. It didn't ache. It just opened quietly, like a door that had always been ajar. I folded the message and tucked it next to the original note in my coat pocket. The receipt from the first day had faded slightly now, the ink softening like it had exhaled. I stood there, surrounded by traffic and quiet and sky, and realized that these weren't breadcrumbs. This wasn't a trail. These were lanterns, left by different hands, maybe for different reasons, but all lit with the same impulse. Let someone know. Let them know they're not alone in the hours they think are empty. Let them know the tomatoes mattered, that the smile did too, that we are all leaving small reminders all the time. Most are never found, but some land exactly where they need to. I started keeping a small tin box near the door. Inside it, blank slips of paper, a pencil, and a few already folded messages I hadn't yet left anywhere. Some came from half-dreams, some from the stillness of early morning. None were perfect. That wasn't the point. One said, "It's okay to pause here." Another, "Someone doesn't know they need this yet." I began carrying one every time I left the house, not to place it, but to be ready. And slowly, I stopped waiting for the right spot. I learned to trust the silence around me to say when. One day, it was the inside pocket of a coat in a thrift shop. Another day, a planter box outside a closed bookstore. I left one inside a returned library book with a folded napkin as a marker. I never stayed to see if they were found. I didn't look back. I began thinking of the original note, the folded receipt, not as an invitation to find answers, but as a key that opened the door inward. It hadn't made my life bigger. It had made it quieter, but fuller, more connected. I started seeing everything differently. A chalk heart on a sidewalk wasn't just a child's game. It was someone saying, "I was here." A sticker on a bus stop. "You are not as alone as you feel." Wasn't just decoration. It was someone lighting a candle in the fog. That day, I left a message at the bus terminal, on a bench that faced nothing in particular. It said, "If this is the moment you needed, it's yours." Then I sat beside it for a while. Not to watch, not to wait, just to be part of the moment I had offered. And something about that, sitting next to a gift you'll never see unwrapped, felt like peace. It was taped to my front door. Small, square, cream-colored paper, the kind used in old notepads or journals forgotten at the back of drawers. No envelope, no name, just 3 words in dark blue ink. You were seen. That was it. The handwriting wasn't familiar. It wasn't the soft lean of the first note, nor the steadiness of the second. This was simpler, still, like someone wrote it knowing they didn't need to say more. I stood there holding the paper, heart not racing, just very, very still. Like the world had stopped talking for a moment so I could hear myself. I walked inside, set the note on the kitchen table, and sat down without taking off my jacket. The room felt different, not brighter, just less empty. I made tea without thinking, like my hands remembered how to do it before my thoughts caught up. As I waited for the water to boil, I kept my eyes on the note. You were seen. It didn't say by whom, or when, or how, but I knew it wasn't just about today. It was about every small moment I had folded into silence, every note left in the sleeve of a coat, every quiet pause I had honored, every time I had passed someone and chose not to speak, but to notice. Maybe someone had noticed me back. Maybe someone had followed a thread that began long before either of us realized it was being sewn. That night, I didn't leave a note anywhere. I didn't write a new one. I just sat by the window, the folded message beside me, the candle unlit, the stone still in its place. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I needed to do anything. The silence felt complete, like someone had finally answered a question I hadn't known I'd been asking. The next day, I wrote nothing, and the day after that, I didn't feel paused. I felt still, like something inside me had reached the edge of a quiet clearing and was no longer walking, but simply standing, breathing. I carried the message with me, folded into the back of my notebook. You were seen, and I didn't need to ask how or by whom, just that it had happened. One evening, I returned to the spot where I had first read the original note just outside the corner shop, by the brick wall that always seemed to hold the sun a little longer than it should. There, taped to the inside of the shop's window, was a new slip of paper. Not mine, not addressed. Just hanging softly between daylight and glass. Every kindness you give stays longer than you think. I smiled. Not at the message, but at the fact that it existed, that someone else, somewhere, had begun writing forward too. Maybe because of me, maybe not. Maybe the folded receipt had passed through a dozen hands before mine. Or maybe I had always been meant to read it. I walked home slowly. At the mailbox in my building, I slipped in one last message, no paper this time, just a small handwritten sticker inside the flap that read, "If you're looking for a sign, you've already started listening." Then I went upstairs, lit the candle, held the stone, and wrote one more message. I didn't plan to leave, not yet. Just folded it neatly and placed it inside the tin box by the door. It said, "Thank you for writing first, because someone had, and someone would again. I was sure of it."